Last spring, I picked up a babysitting job for the Davids, a family who lived just 5 streets away from me in Chandler, Arizona. I was 17, working odd jobs to save up for community college, and when they offered me $20 an hour, it felt like the perfect gig. Their neighborhood seemed calm and safe. Single-story houses, neat lawns, and bright streetlights lining the block. My parents gave me the green light. I arrived around 6:30 p.m. Mrs. David walked me through the basics: the alarm system, Wi-Fi password, and emergency contacts. She had already tucked 4-year-old Sybil and 6-year-old Tyler into pajamas, and she left chicken nuggets in the fridge in case they got hungry again. Mr. David reminded me that bedtime was 8:30 sharp before they headed out to a charity dinner downtown. The second the front door closed, I locked the deadbolt, just habit. The evening started out exactly as expected. The kids and I colored with crayons, watched half an episode of Paw Patrol, then brushed teeth together. At 8:25, I led them upstairs, read a short story about a lost puppy, and switched on their moon-shaped nightlight. Its blue glow filled the room, and within minutes, both kids were sound asleep. Downstairs, I texted my mom, spread out my biology flashcards on the kitchen island, and poured myself a cold drink. Everything was peaceful until 9:15. That's when the doorbell rang. I froze. The Davids hadn't mentioned anyone stopping by. Peering through the peephole, I saw a man in his late 30s. Gray hoodie, dark jeans, sneakers. He had a keyring in one hand and waved casually at the door camera. Behind him, a black Honda idled at the curb. In a calm, steady voice, he said, "Hey, I'm the kid's uncle, Brandon. Forgot my keys earlier. Just need to grab something upstairs." His tone wasn't aggressive. He seemed polite, even friendly. But something inside me screamed wrong. The Davids had never mentioned a brother or uncle. Through the locked door, I forced my voice to stay steady. The parents didn't say anyone was coming. He nodded like it was no big deal. "That's on me. I told my sister I had the spare. Look, Sybil asked for her purple blanket earlier, right? She always wants it when she's tired. And Tyler had mac and cheese before he changed into his dinosaur pajamas. I know their routine." My stomach nodded. He was right. Those details were spot on. Maybe he really was family. Or maybe he was something else. I stepped back from the door and opened the baby monitor app. Both kids were still sound asleep, breathing softly. On the security tablet, the outdoor camera showed him shifting from one foot to the other, but never touching the handle. I called Mrs. David. No answer. Tried Mr. David, straight to voicemail. I debated dialing 911, but hesitated. Arizona dispatched fines for false alarms. And what if I was wrong? Just then, a text buzzed from Mrs. David. "Sorry, the banquet is loud. Everything okay?" I typed fast. "Man here says he's Brandon. Your brother. Wants in." Her reply came quickly. "We don't have a brother. Call the police now." My hand shook. I dialed 911, gave the address, his description, and emphasized that 2 children were upstairs. While I stayed on the line, I heard a soft tap from the hallway. He was knocking again, still polite. "Really need that blanket. 2 minutes, tops." I didn't answer. 10 seconds later, the door camera showed him move toward the front windows, cupping his hands to peer inside. I killed the lights so he couldn't see me. The glow from my phone screen was the only light left. The dispatcher told me, "Units are 3 minutes out. Stay locked inside." I crept toward the back patio door. The lock was secure, curtain closed. Then the backyard motion sensor flicked on, casting the lawn in harsh light. Then off again. My heart pounded. Sirens grew louder. Then silence. Blue and red lights flashed through the blinds. Finally, an officer called out from the porch, giving his badge number. Only then did I unlock the door. They searched the yard and surrounding streets, but the black Honda was gone. Tire tracks pointed toward the main road. Neighbors' cameras hadn't caught anything useful. He had parked just outside their range. Inside, the kids hadn't stirred once. The officers took my statement, praised me for keeping calm, and stayed until Mr. and Mrs. David came racing home, their faces pale. Mrs. David hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. She kept repeating, "Thank you for protecting them." By 12:30 a.m., the patrol cars rolled away. The parents insisted on driving me home, and I accepted, though I couldn't stop glancing over my shoulder the whole ride. That night, my brain kept replaying every second. How had he known the kids' dinner and bedtime? Had he been watching from the yard earlier? Had he overheard me through a cracked window? Later, the Davids discovered one window lock was slightly loose, just enough for someone to slip it open and listen. The fact that he vanished before police arrived made it worse. Either he had a scanner app or instinct sharp enough to know when to bail. Detectives later told me men like him had been reported near elementary schools, picking up bits of kids' conversations to use as proof of being family. He tried the same trick at 3 houses that month. Always polite, always calm, always pretending to belong. That didn't comfort me. It chilled me. The case is still open. No arrests have been made. I still babysit sometimes, but only for relatives. And I never brush off gut instincts anymore. Safety comes down to the smallest choices: locking a gate, double-checking a story, or refusing to open the door. That night taught me one thing. Sometimes danger doesn't kick down your door. Sometimes it just smiles, talks softly, and waits for you to let it in. That night, I made choices that kept 2 children asleep beneath a glowing blue night light, instead of waking to a stranger's footsteps. Even now, months later, I sometimes wake to the memory of that soft knock at the door and the calm, steady voice asking for a child's blanket. It sounded patient, almost friendly, like it could wait forever for someone to trust him. I pray no one ever does. I've never been the type to get carried away with ghost stories or wild imagination. But what happened to me last month hasn't let me rest since. My name's Leah. I'm 32 years old, and I work as a nurse at a small hospital in upstate New York. My shifts usually end late, which means most nights I drive home alone, cutting through stretches of woods and farmland. Normally, it's peaceful, just me, my old Honda Civic, and the low hum of the radio keeping me company. But on this particular night, everything about that routine changed. It was close to 11:30 p.m. I had just finished a brutal 12-hour shift, bone-tired and ready for nothing more than a hot shower in my bed. My usual route was Route 12, a simple 2-lane road lined with trees and the occasional gas station. About 5 miles from home, I slowed when I saw orange construction signs glowing in my headlights. Cones blocked the main road, and a big arrow pointed me left. The sign read, "Detour, road work ahead." I groaned out loud. The last thing I wanted was extra time on the road. Still, I didn't have a choice. I turned onto the side street the signs directed me to. The detour didn't feel right from the beginning. The road was narrow, barely wide enough for 2 cars. Dense woods pressed in on both sides, and there wasn't a single street light or house in sight. My headlights barely reached through the blackness. Gravel crunched under my tires, and the air in my car felt heavier than usual. Instinctively, I turned down the radio and gripped the steering wheel tighter. I kept expecting to see signs of construction equipment, maybe flashing hazard lights or workers in reflective vests. But mile after mile, there was nothing, only trees and the twisting, unmarked road. After 10 minutes, unease began to sink in. I hadn't seen another car since turning off Route 12. My GPS flickered, cutting in and out, as if it couldn't decide where I was. "This doesn't feel right," I muttered under my breath. That's when I checked my rearview mirror, and my stomach dropped. A truck was following me, maybe 100 yards back. No headlights, just a dark, heavy shape sliding through the night in perfect silence. My pulse spiked. Who drives at night without lights? I tried to convince myself it was harmless. Maybe just a local farmer heading home, maybe broken headlights. But as I pressed the gas, the truck matched my speed. Always the same distance behind me. Never closer, never farther. I sped up again. So did the truck. The panic I had been trying to push down surged forward. My brain scrambled for logic, any logic. But then I noticed something else that made my skin crawl. The detour signs had stopped. No cones, no warnings, nothing. And thinking back, there hadn't been a single sign of road work on Route 12 either. Just those barricades forcing me off the main road. My throat went dry. I reached for my phone to call 911, but the screen mocked me with 2 words: no service. The truck stayed there, quiet, patient, a predator keeping pace. I pressed harder on the gas pedal, my Civic rattling as the road twisted beneath me. The truck was close enough now that I could see its outline in my mirror. An old pickup, dark-colored, Beat up, windows black. I couldn't make out a driver. Just a shadow. Okay, just breathe. Just find your way back, I whispered to myself, gripping the wheels so hard my knuckles turned white. And then, up ahead, salvation, or what I thought was salvation. Faint headlights cutting through the trees. Another car. Relief washed through me like ice water. As the vehicle approached, I slowed and flicked my high beams twice, hoping to get their attention. It was a white SUV. It slowed down too and eased onto the shoulder. Heart hammering, I pulled up alongside, keeping my engine running, my window cracked just enough. "Hey, someone's been following me," I shouted. The driver, a middle-aged man with glasses, leaned out his window, his brow furrowed in concern. "Are you okay?" I pointed frantically behind me. "There's a truck. No headlights. Been tailing me for miles." He squinted into the darkness, scanning the road behind us. His face shifted from confusion to something sharper. "There's no truck," he said firmly. My head whipped toward the mirror. Empty. Completely empty. The road stretched back into nothing but blackness. My blood turned cold. I knew what I had seen. I had watched it in my mirror for miles. The man cleared his throat. "Listen," he said quietly. "This road's strange. I got detoured here too, but there's no construction on 12. Checked it myself. You should follow me back to the main road." I was too shaken to argue. I nodded, and when he pulled away, I followed close. My eyes darted to the mirror every few seconds, but nothing. No truck, no headlights. Just darkness pressing in from every side. 10 minutes later, we rolled back onto Route 12. The cones, the barricades, the glowing signs gone. Like they had never been there at all. I thanked the man quickly, my voice shaking, and he said he'd call the police to report it. I didn't wait around. I sped home, locked every door, and sat awake until sunrise. The next morning, I called the sheriff's office myself. They told me flat out, no road work had been scheduled on Route 12 that night. No detours had been set up. I spent hours searching online and found threads on small local forums, people describing almost the exact same thing. Fake detour signs, deserted roads, strange vehicles that appeared and disappeared. Some laughed it off as a prank. Others hinted at darker motives. Robbers, traffickers, worse. I don't know what I saw. Maybe I was just exhausted. Maybe stress made me imagine the whole thing. But I can't shake the memory of that truck. The way it followed me without headlights, patient and deliberate, waiting for me to slip. Now, I take a longer route home, even if it adds 20 minutes. And every time I see a construction sign on a quiet road, my chest tightens. Because I know not every detour is meant to take you where you need to go. I don't think I'll ever feel completely safe driving alone at night again. When I was 15, I met my husband. He had just turned 16 during an art class at school. Our little town didn't exactly offer teenagers a ton of things to do. A trip to Target counted as an exciting date. But the town did have its own kind of charm. It was known for its mining history, the canyon that cut through its heart, and the river that ran wild and beautiful below. That river, with its winding trails and breathtaking overlooks, was the pride of the area. I had grown up on those trails, hiking them, biking them, exploring until I knew every turn and bend by heart. They were like an extension of my backyard. To me, the river trails were safe, peaceful, almost comforting. One trail in particular was my favorite. Just a half-mile hike, it led to a small bridge over the river. The bridge wasn't spectacular, but from there you could see the water framed by rugged canyon walls. It was the kind of place that made the world feel still. But not far from that trail stood another bridge, one that loomed in everyone's mind for darker reasons. It was one of the tallest bridges in the world, a jaw-dropping feat of engineering that drew sightseers and thrill-seekers from everywhere. The views from its trails were unforgettable, but its history was heavy. Too many lives had ended there. Everyone in town knew it as both a marvel and a tragedy, a place shadowed by loss. One evening, around 6 o'clock, my husband and I decided to walk the familiar trail to the smaller bridge. It seemed harmless enough, just a short hike we'd done dozens of times before. But the canyon has a way of swallowing light early. Even when the sun hasn't quite set, darkness settles in fast. That night, the shadows crept in quicker than I expected. The air itself felt different, heavier, charged. The hike wasn't long, but as we made our way deeper, the forest grew quieter than I'd ever heard it. The usual birdsong and rustling leaves were gone. By the time we reached the turn toward the bridge, it was pitch black. Not just dim, completely dark. Our phones' flashlights barely pierced the void, lighting only a small circle around us. The rest of the world seemed to disappear. A sick feeling twisted in my stomach. Something about the silence, the darkness, felt off. I suggested turning back, but my husband, always braver or maybe just stubborn, wanted to keep going. Then we saw him. Standing 3 feet off the trail, right where the bridge began, was a figure. My light caught his back first, and my breath caught in my throat. He was massive, easily 6 or 7 feet tall, built heavy, probably 200 or 250 pounds. He wore a brown flannel and dark pants. His hair shot straight up, spiked almost unnaturally, as if it had been sculpted into place. But it wasn't just his size that shook me. His proportions weren't right. His arms dangled too long, swinging oddly at his sides. His head was nearly round, too round, like a basketball set directly on his shoulders. I couldn't see his feet. He was just there. He stood perfectly still, staring down the slope into the darkness below. He didn't move. He didn't turn. He didn't acknowledge us. I whispered, my voice shaking, "What is that?" My husband didn't answer. He was frozen too, locked on the figure. We all stood in silence, locked in a terrifying tableau. A minute passed, though it felt like forever. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my legs felt cemented to the ground. Finally, my husband found his voice. He called out, shaky but firm, "Hey man, what are you doing?" The figure moved. Not suddenly, slowly, deliberately, turning toward us as if he had all the time in the world. The moment he shifted, nausea rolled over me. Every alarm in my body went off at once. I didn't wait to see his face. I grabbed my husband's arm and bolted. My flashlight beam bounced wildly as we tore down the trail. My breath came in sharp, painful gasps, and I refused to look back. I didn't want to know if he was following. I just ran. I heard my husband yelling my name behind me, his footsteps pounding the dirt. I had gotten a head start, but fear pushed me faster. By the time we reached the trailhead, I was fumbling with the car keys, shaking so badly I could barely hit unlock. The parking lot was completely empty. No other cars. No sign anyone else was there. We peeled out of that lot and drove the 5 miles back to town in total silence. There was no cell service until we reached the first glow of streetlights. I don't think either of us really breathed until we saw those lights. The whole drive, my mind reeled with questions I couldn't shake. How did he get there? Why was he standing off the trail, staring into nothing? And why hadn't there been another single car at the trailhead? That night carved something into me I can't shake. I had always thought of those trails as safe, familiar mine. But now every time I picture that figure, too tall, too still, too wrong, I feel that same cold dread in my chest. And I know, with absolute certainty, that we were never supposed to see him. A few days later, curiosity won out. I couldn't get that figure out of my head. I kept replaying it in my mind, its size, its stillness, its wrongness. Was it really a person? A prank? Or just my imagination in the dark? I convinced my husband we needed to go back. This time, though, I wasn't about to step foot on that trail alone with him. I asked a few friends to join us, figuring that daylight and numbers would make it safer. More rational. I told myself that once I saw the spot again, I'd realize it had been nothing. Maybe a jacket tossed over a post, maybe a weirdly shaped log, maybe just shadows playing tricks on me. But when we reached the bridge, my stomach dropped. There was nothing there. No post, no rock, no jacket, no explanation at all for what we'd seen. And then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The exact place where the figure had stood wasn't flat ground. It was a sharp drop, about 4 feet down, meaning if it really had been standing there that night, it wouldn't have been 6 or 7 feet tall. It would have been closer to 8 or 10. That realization hit me like a punch. Whatever we saw wasn't just tall, it was impossibly tall. This town, this river, they've always felt alive to me. Some of its history is beautiful. Some of it is tragic. From the miners who once filled the canyons to the people who lost their lives on the tall bridge, the stories here cling to the air. Sometimes it feels like the place itself has a pulse, almost like it's watching. I've told this story countless times, to friends, to family, to anyone who would listen, but no one has ever given me an answer. Some say it had to be a person. Others think ghost. Some suggest something else entirely. But that image of a figure impossibly tall, perfectly still, staring into the dark, still haunts me. For a long time, I kept it to myself. I thought silence was safer, that keeping quiet meant I didn't have to relive it. But silence doesn't help anyone. Maybe someone else needs to hear this as a warning. I work nights as a security guard at a small airport in Germany. It's not glamorous, but it's steady. Most flights leave before dawn, so my shift is always in the dark. For 5 years, it was routine, badge scans, cameras, locked doors, nothing unusual. But last July, something happened that I can't explain. Summer travel season was at its peak. Families herded kids through lines. Tourists dragged clattering suitcases. Every check-in counter was crawling with people. Yet despite the noise, despite the movement, something about the terminal felt off. I couldn't explain it, so I kept working. Near midnight, I took my break. I bought a chocolate bar and an energy drink from the bakery and sat down at a metal table. I started watching a short video on my phone when I suddenly felt it, an urge to turn around. And when I did, a man was standing there. He wore a black rain jacket, hood down, staring directly at me. His eyes locked on mine. He didn't look away, didn't pretend to glance at the shops or the crowd. He just stared. I held his gaze for a couple seconds, then forced myself to look back at my phone. Strange travelers pass through airports every day. Most are harmless. I told myself he was one of them. I finished half my drink, shoved my phone in my pocket, and walked into the restroom to wash my hands. When I came out, my heart skipped. The same man stood in the main hallway, about 50 meters away. His head tilted slightly, eyes locked on me again. The second I noticed him, he turned and slipped into a side corridor. No sound, no hesitation, just gone. A quiet alarm started ringing in my head, but technically, he hadn't broken a single rule. I went back to my post and spent the rest of the night pacing gates, checking doors, pretending I wasn't unsettled. At dawn, my shift ended. My phone battery had died, but I wasn't far from home, so I shoved it in my pocket and started walking. Halfway back, I remembered the power bank in my bag, connected the cable, and pressed the power button. That's when I saw it. A notification filled the screen. Unknown AirTag detected. It is moving with you. Distance, 800 meters. I don't own an AirTag. I froze. The street was empty except for a row of flickering lamps. Another notification appeared. 600 meters. Then 500. My chest tightened. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe someone nearby dropped a suitcase. Maybe the tracker was in someone else's bag. But the numbers kept falling. 400. 300. I broke into a jog. 200. I turned a corner and started running, legs going numb. The distance dropped faster. 100. Finally, I reached my building. My hands shook as I jammed the key into the lock, slammed the door shut, and pressed my back against it. The hallway was silent. My phone buzzed. 50, 20, 10. I held my breath and looked through the peephole. Nothing. Just an empty street. Hands trembling, I dumped out my pockets, tore through my backpack. Nothing. No tracker. No AirTag. Nothing at all. I wanted to call the police, but what would I even say? The notification on my screen told me someone was following me. I told myself I was overtired. The night had been long, and maybe my mind was playing tricks. I changed clothes, laid on the bed, and put on a horror story video to calm down. The narrator's voice usually helped me sleep. I drifted off. Sometime later, I woke up. The room was dark. The video had ended, but my phone screen glowed faintly. Another notification waited there. Unknown AirTag detected. Distance, 2 meters. 2 meters. That meant inside my room. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. I shut the screen off, and slowly, my eyes adjusted to the dark. That's when I saw him. At the foot of my bed, beside the wardrobe, stood a man in a black rain jacket. The same eyes. The same face. A strangled sound tore from my throat. He stepped back, opened the door, and slipped out before my feet even hit the floor. By the time the police arrived, the apartment was empty. No fingerprints. No tracker. The only trace left behind was a single wet footprint by my bed. They searched every room, every window, even the stairwell. Nothing. The door frame was undamaged. My key was the only one that existed. They told me to stay with family. That night, I slept on my sister's couch with the hallway light on and my phone clutched in my hand. The next morning, I returned with a locksmith. We had a locksmith come in, and by the end of that morning, new deadbolts were installed and a camera was mounted above the door. Only then did we sit down and take apart my backpack, flipping every pocket inside out on the kitchen table. At first, it looked normal, just crumbs, lint, and some old receipts. But tucked deep in the bottom seam and inner pocket, hidden beneath the lining, we found it. A smooth, white plastic disc, smaller than a coin. An AirTag. My blood ran cold. Someone had cut into the fabric, slipped the tracker inside, and glued the seam so perfectly I'd never noticed. That meant whoever it was had been close enough to unzip my bag and plant it without me feeling a thing. Maybe when I leaned over the counter at the bakery. Maybe when I was checking my watch near the exit. I'll never know. Now, that AirTag sits sealed in a plastic evidence bag on my desk. I don't keep it as a trophy, but as a reminder that danger doesn't always look like danger. Sometimes it's silent, ordinary, standing right behind you while you're too distracted to notice. I still work night shifts, but I don't walk home anymore. And every single time my phone vibrates in my pocket, I remember those eyes, that silent face waiting for me to realize he'd been watching all along. If you ever feel like someone is watching you, don't ignore it. Trust your gut. Move. I was lucky. The next person might not be. And maybe that's why camping has always been my escape. Out there under the pines with the crackle of fire and the smell of smoke on my clothes, I feel alive. Last summer, me and my buddies Jake, Matt, and Amber planned a weekend trip to Blackwood Forest. Just 2 hours from town, it's a sprawling stretch of thick pines, trails that twist for miles, and patches so dense the sun barely makes it through. It's a popular place, but it's huge, big enough to feel like you're the only people left in the world. We'd camped there before, so none of us thought twice. But this trip changed everything. Months later, I still wake up sweating, dreaming of Jake. We got to Blackwood on a warm Friday afternoon, crammed into Matt's old Jeep with gear stuffed everywhere. The air cooled as soon as we stepped into the forest, and we found a clearing near a narrow creek. Someone had left a fire pit behind, so we set up around it. Jake was in high spirits, tossing a football while cracking dumb jokes. Amber wrestled with the tent, Matt got straight to stacking wood for a fire, and I dragged the cooler out of the Jeep, stuffed with sodas, hot dogs, all the usual. Night fell fast. By 9, the forest was swallowed in pitch-black darkness, the kind where your flashlight feels like the only thing keeping the shadows from swallowing you whole. We sat by the fire, roasting marshmallows and trading dumb stories. Jake, of course, started in on a creepy legend about Blackwood, something about people vanishing in the 80s, never found. Amber rolled her eyes, called him full of it, and we laughed. But I noticed Jake's eyes kept darting to the trees, like part of him half expected something to step out. Around 11, he stood up, flashlight in hand. "Gonna hit the creek," he said, smirking. Amber warned him not to go far, and he shot back. "Relax, Mom. I'm not a kid." That was Jake, cocky, playful, always pushing it. We didn't think twice. The creek was maybe 100 yards from camp, close enough to hear it bubbling through the silence. But 10 minutes passed, then 20. Amber kept checking her phone, her voice tight when she asked, "Shouldn't he be back by now?" Matt tried to brush it off, but I could tell by the way he avoided my eyes that he was uneasy too. I finally stood and shouted into the dark, "Jake, quit screwing around." My voice carried, then disappeared into the endless trees. No answer. Something inside me twisted hard. Jake couldn't have gone far. We decided to split up. Amber stayed behind in case he circled back, while Matt and I grabbed flashlights and pushed into the woods. I followed the sound of the creek, my beam bouncing across roots and underbrush. Every few steps I called his name, and each time my voice felt smaller, weaker. The forest was dead quiet. No insects, no owls, just silence, so heavy it pressed against my ears. Then I saw it, his flashlight, lying in the dirt, still on, aimed into a tangle of ferns. My heart dropped into my stomach. Jake wasn't careless. He would never just drop it. I picked it up, the beam trembling as my hand shook. Footprints led from the spot toward the creek. I followed them into the mud, and then they just stopped. No turn, no stumble, just ended, like he'd vanished mid-step. I screamed for Matt, and when he ran up and saw the light in my hand, his face went pale. Together, we searched, our calls tearing through the night. By midnight, Amber joined us, her voice cracking from shouting his name. We searched for hours, down the creek, along the trails, back at camp. Nothing. By 2 in the morning, exhaustion set in, but none of us could stop. Amber cried quietly, whispering, "We should have never let him go alone." Matt kept mumbling, "He's fine. He's just lost." But even he didn't sound convinced. The air was heavy that night, like the forest itself was watching us. At dawn, we gave in and called the Rangers. They came fast, dogs, drones, even a helicopter. We showed them Jake's flashlight, the strange footprints. They asked questions. Had Jake been acting strange? Did he wander off on purpose? I told them the truth. No, he was just Jake. Loud, stupid, happy Jake. The Rangers nodded, but I saw it in their eyes. Blackwood had a reputation. People went missing here. Not often, but enough. Some were found. Some weren't. And days later, as the search grew, with volunteers, more dogs, and more eyes combing the forest, one thought gnawed at me the most. Jake didn't just get lost. Something out there had taken him. Amber was falling apart, blaming herself for everything. Matt barely spoke anymore. He just stared at the trees like if he glared long enough, Jake would come walking out. Me? I kept replaying that night over and over, searching for something I might have missed. The way Jake looked back at the woods before leaving, the strange silence that followed, and those footprints that stopped dead at the creek. It just didn't add up. The Rangers combed the area for days. No blood, no clothing, no broken branches, no sign of struggle. Nothing. They searched caves, ravines, even the old logging trails that cut deep into the forest. The dogs followed his scent, but it vanished at the same spot as the footprints. One of the Rangers, an older guy with tired eyes, pulled me aside and said, "Sometimes people just disappear. Blackwood has too many places to get lost." I wanted to punch him. Jake didn't just get lost. He was gone. Weeks turned into months, and the search was slowly scaled back, until eventually it stopped. The police told us they'd keep his file open, but I could see in their faces they'd already given up. Amber moved away, unable to stand living in town with the constant reminders. Matt and I hardly talk anymore. Seeing each other is like tearing open the wound all over again. Still, I find myself driving out to Blackwood sometimes. I walk to that same creek, stand where the footprints ended, and just stare, waiting for some kind of sign. I don't even know what I'm hoping for. An explanation, a clue, anything. I've read about cases like Jake's, people who vanish in forests without leaving a trace. Some blame animals, but predators leave evidence. Others say sinkholes or hidden caves swallow people up, but the Rangers checked. Then there are the stranger theories, the ones about lights in the trees or voices luring people deeper into the woods. I always tell myself I don't believe in that crap. But at night, lying awake, I start to wonder, what if Jake saw something? What if he followed it? I dream about him sometimes. In those dreams, I'm back at the creek, and he's standing there smiling like everything's fine. But when I get closer, his face shifts, blank hollow, not Jake anymore. I always wake up gasping, my heart pounding like I just run for my life. I don't know what happened to Jake. Maybe I never will. But I know one thing for certain. I'm never camping in Blackwood again. The forest took my friend, and I won't give it another chance to take me too. It all started with this guy, Isaiah. I met him about a year before Jake disappeared. He was a landscaper, same as me. Back then, I was working for a company that caused me nothing but problems. I can't say their name because of legal stuff, but that's where this story begins. I first met Isaiah at a landfill while dumping a work trailer. I was the driver and foreman that day. He struck up a conversation. seemed normal enough. I told him I'd only been landscaping for a year, but dreamed of starting my own business. He handed me a business card, but I didn't think much of it. I already had a job. Fast forward to the day, everything shifted. I've been laid off, desperate for work, so I dug out Isaiah's card and gave him a call. He remembered me right away and offered to pick me up at 6 a.m. Since I didn't have a car, I gave him my address. At the time, I was relieved. I thought I caught a break. That morning, I woke up at 4:30. My ex and his dad were leaving for their own jobs, so I got up with them. Not my proudest moment, but after they left, I used a substance I shouldn't have. I don't touch that stuff anymore, but back then it was a mistake I kept making. Just as I came down, Isaiah called. I rushed to get ready. Jeans, boots, hoodie, running out the door, still tying my laces. He picked me up, friendly enough at first. I asked if I could vape. He said sure, and we hit the freeway. But then things got off. He asked if I'd had my morning sausage. I asked what he meant. He laughed and made an inappropriate joke. I told him I wasn't comfortable with that, but he just laughed again. At one point, he pulled over to check the trailer. That's when I felt it, a deep, gnawing gut feeling that something wasn't right. I brushed it off as anxiety, but I shouldn't have. When he got back in, he started asking weirder questions, like if I'd ever thought about becoming a dancer. I said no, but he wouldn't drop it, insisting I be good at it. I reminded him I had a boyfriend. He laughed it off, but the tension grew. A little later, he reached over and touched my leg. I told him to stop. He moved his hand back, but kept grinning. At a gas station, I ran inside to use the bathroom, and, stupidly, I used again. When I came back, he texted asking if I wanted a drink. I asked for a Red Bull. He brought it out, and we kept driving, but that feeling in my chest only got heavier. I called my sister, told her I felt like something bad was going to happen. She laughed, thought I was joking, but I wasn't. I hung up when he came back to the truck. Then, out of nowhere, he opened the glove box, pulled out a knife, and told me to stay quiet. Seconds later, he laughed it off, said it was just for cutting fruit. I forced myself to laugh too, but my stomach dropped. When we arrived at a gated community for work, he gave the guard both addresses and even used my name. I froze, too afraid to speak. The first job only lasted 30 minutes, but it felt like hours. He wouldn't stop invading my space. At the second house, he kept pushing, more comments about me, more pressure, more of that same grin. Every instinct I had was screaming at me. Something was wrong. I tried to act like I wasn't scared, throwing out a few tough words to push him back. Meanwhile, I kept secretly texting my sister, letting her know what was happening. But he noticed. He asked who I was talking to, and I quickly lied, saying I was just making plans for later after work. That's when the fear really hit me. If something went wrong, no one would know. I cracked open a Red Bull, hoping the caffeine would keep me sharp. By the time we reached our fourth stop, I told him I needed a bathroom. He offered to drive me to one, and along the way, he started calling me a nickname I hated. I asked him to stop, and to my surprise, he apologized. Once I got inside, I called my ex and spilled everything. Then I tried my sister again, but she didn't answer. Out of desperation, I used the little bit of stuff I had left on me. Stupid, I know, but I just wanted to stay alert. When I got back in the truck, he immediately questioned why it took so long. I lied again, made up an excuse, and we kept driving. By 11 a.m., he said the workday was done, but I knew it wasn't over. He got on the phone, speaking in Spanish, and even though I didn't understand, I felt my stomach twist. Then he casually asked if I had plans. I lied, said yes. But then he mentioned my boyfriend's job, where he worked, and even what time he'd be off. My heart dropped. He knew things he shouldn't have. That's when he suggested we get a hotel. Panic set in. I started frantically messaging my family, trying to let them know something was wrong. But we were far from familiar ground. He suddenly asked if I used drugs. I said no. Then he made a call, asking someone for some, laughing while staring at me. He asked my age. I told him 19, hoping it would make him back off, but instead he started throwing out more personal, more inappropriate questions. I gave random answers just to confuse him. Finally, we drove back into town. I chugged the rest of my Red Bull, ready to run if I had shot. He started talking about his family like he was just a normal guy, but all I could think was, how could someone act like this while planning something so dark? We pulled into a bank near my house. I thought about running, but instead I tried to appeal to him. I asked, "How would you feel if someone treated your wife or daughter this way?" His response? He slammed my head against the window. Dazed, I sat there while he muttered about money for plans I never agreed to. As we drove past my street, I saw my mom and grandma outside. I had to hold back tears. Moments later, we passed the police station, and it hit me. You can text 911. My hand shook as I typed. My name, my age, what was happening. To my relief, they responded, asking where I was. I gave him every detail I could. Meanwhile, he asked if I was tired. That's when it clicked. He had drugged my drink. Luckily, the other stuff I'd taken must have countered it, or I'd be out cold. He then asked if I wanted to stop for a drink. I said yes, hoping for a chance. At the gas station, he warned me not to run, so I froze. But later, at another stop, I asked if I could get food inside. He let me. Inside, I dropped items on purpose, trying to get attention. I locked myself in the bathroom, where another woman was inside. I loudly told my ex on the phone what was happening. The woman heard, knocked, and asked if I needed help. I said yes. She went out and told him the restroom was closed. Minutes later, I heard a knock. It was the police. They said it was safe to come out. I hugged one of them the moment I stepped out, shaking with relief. Outside, I saw Isaiah's truck surrounded by cops. He tried to come closer, but they blocked him. I explained everything. One officer took me to the car and said Isaiah was denying it all. I told them to test the drink. Sure enough, it came back positive for sleeping pills. Still, they treated it like a he said, she said case. They dropped me off, collected my clothes for evidence, and told me to stay locked inside. Later, I called my mom to pick me up. Sitting in her car, I finally broke down and cried. My parents told the family I was safe, and I stayed somewhere else for a while before moving back home. Looking back, I realized the very substance I used to stay awake may have saved my life. Now it's 2025. I'm 22 and still working landscaping. But things haven't gone back to normal. Strange calls with nothing but breathing. Photos of me left at my door. The police shrug it off as pranks, but my gut says otherwise. The fear lingers. But here's what matters. I survived. My name is Ella. I was 17 when this happened. I worked at a soccer stadium with 3 clubs, one for families, one called Inter F on the west side, and the biggest one, ZAG on the east side, where I served as a boozer and soda runner. That night, with 2 rival teams and a stadium full of tension, I never expected my own life would turn into the kind of story you only hear about on the news. Usually we have our regulars, people I can greet by name, but on nights like this when the stadium is packed for a big game, most of the customers are complete strangers, faces I'll only ever see once. Everything was moving along as normally as it could, right up until halftime. That's when the crowd poured back inside from their seats, hungry and ready for food. My job kicked into overdrive. I was rushing between tasks, handing out plates, refilling silverware, checking on the buffet line, snapping photos for families, and running behind the bar to work the soda machines. The line never seemed to end. I was just trying to keep up when I noticed him, an older man, maybe late 60s, early 70s. He stepped up to the counter with a rough, gravelly voice that told me he'd probably smoked his whole life. "Hi, what can I get you?" I asked, giving him my practice smile. "Coke," he muttered. I poured his drink and moved to the next person, but when I looked up, he was still standing there. I figured he wanted a straw and pointed down the bar. "Straws are right over there." But he didn't move. He just stared. His eyes lingered too long, long enough that my skin prickled. Finally, after what felt like forever, he walked off. Not long after, he came back. "Hello again," I said, forcing some cheer into my voice. "Need a refill?" Instead of answering, he asked, "How old are you?" His voice was still that same gruff tone, and the question made me freeze. I gave a nervous laugh. "Sorry, I'm not allowed to say. Company policy." He just grinned, flashing yellowed, chipped teeth before looking down at my name tag. Ella. Pretty name for a pretty lady. It wasn't unusual for drunk fans to flirt with the women working here, but something about him unsettled me. I forced a polite smile and thanked him until he walked away. Shaken, I went to the back and told my co-workers about the man. They laughed it off, agreeing it was creepy but brushing aside. I did the same until later. After the game, we all stayed to clean up. Once we finished, we headed toward the main kitchen downstairs, hauling carts full of dirty dishes and linen. I was trailing behind everyone when I saw him again. He was standing near the bathrooms, just staring. My stomach sank. The game had ended almost half an hour ago. Why was he still here? Something in my gut screamed that it wasn't right. I brushed it off and kept moving, but the unease stayed with me. I clocked out and walked around the stadium toward the street where my car was parked. Normally, I felt safe since police were always nearby, directing traffic. But as I got further away, the flashing lights faded into the distance, and I realized how quiet it had become. That's when I saw him again, under the street lamp, walking straight toward me. My chest tightened. I picked up my pace, and so did he. By the time I reached my car, my hand was shaking so badly I could barely get my keys out of my bag. Before I could unlock the door, I felt a cold hand grip my shoulder. I spun around, and there he was, too close, holding something in his hand that I couldn't make out in the dark alley. He didn't say a word. Instead, he grabbed my arm and began dragging me. My heart pounded. I yanked against him, scratching and clawing, desperate to get free. In the chaos, I pulled strands of my hair loose and dropped them on the ground, praying that if I vanished, someone would at least find my DNA. Just as panic swallowed me, two men appeared from around the corner of a nearby parking lot. They froze for a second, taking in the scene. "Help me!" I screamed, my voice breaking. They rushed forward. One grabbed my free arm, while the other shoved the old man away. Shaking, I pulled out my phone and called 911. Within minutes, the police arrived and took him into custody. I thanked the strangers who had saved me and drove off, my hands trembling the entire way home. This happened just 2 weeks ago, and I still can't shake the fear. The police told me he was linked to 2 other attempted kidnappings at stadiums. That knowledge hasn't made me feel safer. It's made me more cautious than ever. Now, I always park close to exits, I carry something for protection, and I never, ever ignore my instincts. Because that night proved something to me: your gut is rarely wrong. And to this day, I'm still grateful to those 2 men who turned the corner at the exact moment I needed them. Without them, I might not be here to tell this story. The only way inside is through a narrow crack high up on the outside wall. Years ago, older scouts drilled bolts there to anchor climbing ropes, and that's still how we get in. One by one, we clip our harnesses to the rope and start pulling ourselves upward. The stone feels slick and cold under my palms. Halfway up, the rumble of a truck approaches. I press my chest flat against the wall, trying to vanish into the rock. Bright headlights sweep across just below my boots. My heart slams against my ribs until the truck finally roars away. Only then do I climb again, rolling through the opening at the top. The change is instant. Inside the fort, the air never shifts. It stays cool, about 14 degrees, no matter the season. All noise from the road is gone. Even my own breathing seems to disappear. A thin current of air slides past my legs, like the fort itself is exhaling. The blackness is complete. I can't see my hand in front of my face. Our rule is strict: no flashlights. We move only by touch and memory. The tunnels are barely wider than my shoulders. If I stand up straight, my head scrapes the ceiling, so I walk bent over. The wet walls brush against my sleeves. Each step slaps against stone, echoing back at me. Sometimes the echo lags, as if something else is walking just a beat behind. When I stop, it takes one more step. It feels like a shadow I can't get rid of. Tonight, I'm the guide. My job is to crawl in first and wait at a side tunnel so the younger scouts don't get lost. They won't know I'm there. I'm supposed to give them a scare, a lesson to keep calm in the dark. I count my paces, slip into my little nook, and crouch down. The concrete presses cool against my gloves. Then I wait. Time inside this silence moves differently. Minutes stretch into hours. My ears start noticing things I usually ignore. The faint rub of my sleeve against my chest, the hiss of air sliding through the passage. Then, finally, a flicker, a faint light at the end of the tunnel. It bobs gently like a candle flame. I smirk. Someone must have hidden a birthday candle in their pocket. Flashlights are banned, but candles? Never. I get ready to jump out, grab it, and put the fear of God into them. But the closer the light drifts, the stranger it looks. It isn't orange like fire. It's a cold, pale white, no bigger than a pea. I strain to hear footsteps, but nothing comes. No shuffle, no scuff of boots. Just silence. 5 meters away, the light vanishes, snuffed out as suddenly as it appeared. I lean forward, expecting a glow on the floor, but the tunnel is swallowed in perfect black. Then, right in front of me, I hear it. The faint scrape of cloth against stone. And then, I feel it. A warm, damp breath brushes across my face. Close. Too close. I freeze. My lungs lock. The air smells of sweat and earth, like someone who has walked a long distance. Whoever it is, they're standing inches from me, but I can't see a thing. For a few unbearable seconds, we share the same breath, both holding still. My ears ring, my chest burns. At last, the breath drifts away, sliding past my left shoulder. The air cools again. Then, down the passage, a faint red glow flickers once before vanishing. Silence returns. I count to 40 in my head before finally letting my breath out. My knees shake. I want to run back to the rope, but I can't. Younger scouts are on their way. I have to stay. When footsteps finally arrive, they're heavy and solid, the familiar thud of army boots. Relief floods through me. Only our scouts wear those boots here. A tall figure appears. I reach out and touch his arm. Keep straight, I whisper. First right tunnel. Stay together. He nods and starts walking. But something nags me, so I ask quietly, who climbed in first tonight? He frowns. Me. I was the first one inside. The words chill me. If he was first, then who stood inches from me in the dark? I let him go, listening to his steps fade. The tunnel feels colder now. More scouts pass. I guide each one. None mention seeing a light. None hurt anyone else. When the last scout goes by, I wait 10 more minutes before standing. My knees crack loudly in the silence. I trace the wall with my fingertips, heading toward the exit. Every step I take echoes once. And every time, there's still that extra step right behind mine. I quicken my pace. The echo quickens too. I whisper to myself that it's just the tunnel's shape. Just the echo. But I don't believe it. Climbing out is harder than climbing in. My arms tremble, but I drag myself up. At the top, the night is fading. A strip of pale dawn stretches across the trees. Birds sing. The normal world is waiting. The others sit by the van, laughing, showing off rope burns. They ask why I'm pale. I just say I'm tired. We drive home with the windows down, fresh air blowing away the fort's chill. I never tell them about the white light or the breath on my face. But every summer, when the troop returns to Fort 17, I change one thing. I never wait alone inside again. The fort can keep its secret. I rent a small blue house on the east side of Salt Lake City. It's nothing fancy, but it's perfect for me and my orange cat, Maple. The street feels safe, rent is fair, and the mountains rise in the distance like a painted backdrop. For a while, life feels almost peaceful. But one thing ruins it. The neighbor in the duplex next door. Every night, he blasts bass-heavy music until 2 or 3 in the morning. The walls hum, the windows rattle, and even the dishes in my cupboards vibrate. I try everything. Earplugs, white noise apps, polite knocks on his door, but he never answers. After a month of sleepless nights, I finally file a noise complaint online. I hit submit, relieved that maybe it's over. But the next morning, my relief vanishes. At 6 a.m., I walk outside and freeze. All 4 tires on my Honda sag flat against the rims, long straight cuts slashed across each sidewall. The repairs drain my savings. I tell the officer about the complaint, but he just shrugs. Proof and motive aren't the same thing, he says. His words do nothing to calm me. That evening, I try one more knock on my neighbor's door, hoping for a civil talk. The music stops, but no one answers. I stand there in silence, my heartbeat echoing in my ears, until the music kicks back and louder than before. A week drags by. I watch the street every night, locking my doors 3 times over. Then, on a Tuesday evening, Maple doesn't come home for dinner. I shake the food bag, search the alley, and call her name until midnight. Nothing. I post flyers, check shelters, and wait. The house feels empty without her weight on the couch. 7 days later, I open my mailbox and feel my stomach drop. Inside sits a plain envelope with no stamp, no return address, just my name in shaky block letters. The note inside is short. Next time, it's you. My hands shake so badly I nearly drop it. Police bag the letter, but there are no prints, no cameras, no witnesses. Lock up and call if something new happens, they say. That night, I install motion lights, alarms, and cheap security cameras. The first night, raccoon alert. The second, nothing. But on the third night, at 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzes. Motion detected in the backyard. I open the feed and see nothing but black. In the morning, the camera is gone. The screws are still in the siding. Now I sleep on the couch clutching a baseball bat. Every creak of the house makes me sit up. At work, I flinch at sudden noises. I start leaving lights on when I leave, just so the house never looks empty. Fear doesn't wait for proof. 2 weeks later, a soft thump wakes me before dawn. It's coming from the attic. My hand trembles as I pull down the ladder and climb up with a flashlight. Dust drifts through the beam. Near the vent, I see Maple's blue collar, clasp broken. No fur, no blood, just the collar. I sink to my knees. Police search again, but still nothing. No forced entry, no prints. The detective, kind but weary, says, "We need a face on camera." I nod, though I can barely breathe. I replace the stolen camera with a sturdier one, and even board up the basement windows with plywood. My landlord complains, but I don't care. One cloudy afternoon, I drive home and see a white van parked at the duplex. My neighbor is in the doorway, laughing with 2 men hauling big speakers. He meets my eyes and waves slowly. My skin crawls. That night, I sit in my car for 10 minutes before forcing myself inside. I start making a plan, sell the house, move, find another place, even if it means a second job. I call 3 property managers before bed. There's high demand, so I feel a flicker of hope. At 3:07 a.m., my porch camera pings. Someone is standing just beyond the light, a dark silhouette. Slowly, the figure raises a hand, holding something small. A key? A knife? I can't tell. Then he steps back into the darkness. I save the clip and send it to the detective. He calls back at lunch. Mask on the face, no plates on the car. It helps, but not enough for a warrant. Later that day, I find a screwdriver tucked under my welcome mat. I take photos, bag it with gloves, and add it to my growing folder of evidence. The detective thanks me, but offers no promises. That night, I pack a suitcase and sleep at a friend's. The next morning, fresh scratches cover my front door near the lock. I've had enough. My friend helps me list the house, and within a week, an investor buys its site, unseen. I move into a gated complex with cameras and security guards. Maple never returns. The note, the collar, the video, the screwdriver, none of it ever leads to charges. My case is marked inactive. Even now, I check my mail with a tremor in my hands. Anytime music thumps through a wall, my chest tightens. Because somewhere out there, a man knows how to slash tires, steal pets, and slip letters into mailboxes without a sound. He knows my name. He knows I'm still afraid. And some nights, when the world is quiet, I swear I can hear Maple. Almost like he's waiting for the next time.